um, joining me this evening on our study of the Bhagavatam. Just want to make sure that you can hear me. So if somebody can just wave their hands to show that. Okay, thank you. So we will resume our study of Bhakti Vaibhav from the first canto, chapter 4, verse 14. So we'll start with our Mangalacharan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Bhatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavata Bhaktiruttamam Bhaktiruttamam Jayate. So, quick recap. The fourth chapter is the second round of questions that the sages asked Sutta Goswami. In the first three chapters, the sages had asked the 6 questions, which Sutta Goswami answers. And the sages are very happy, and they're further enthused to ask more. So the Bhagavatam, as I had mentioned, is basically a series of conversations between great personalities. At the outermost level, it's a conversation between Srila Vyasadeva and us. So Vyasadeva is talking to us and he's answering our explicit and implicit questions. Then there is this conversation that's happening between, there's a conversation that is happening between the sages of Naimisharanya and Sutta Goswami, who's relating a conversation that is happening between Sukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. And then if you look at the Bhagavatam, it is essentially a series of conversations between Srila Vyasadeva and Narad Muni, between Yudhishthira Maharaj and Narad Muni, between Maitreya Rishi and Vidur, Mahatma Vidur, between Krishna and Uddhav. So it's conversations nested within conversations. And the point that was made earlier on by Sutta Goswami, that it is these questions that lead one to make spiritual advancements. So he spends quite a few verses glorifying the fact that bhakti, the root of bhakti, is our desire for inquiry. And then, of course, he says the inquiry comes from our eagerness to know more, and that eagerness comes from Vaishnav Seva. As we serve devotees, we develop that eagerness. From that eagerness comes the desire to ask questions. And when we get the answers and we start acting upon the answers, we make progress. So after having asked these 6 questions, the sages now ask 4 more questions to Sutta Goswami, which are more specifically clustered around Srimad Bhagavatam, about the speakers of Bhagavatam, which is Srila Vyasadeva and Sukadev Goswami, the primary audience for Bhagavatam, which is Parikshit Maharaj, and the circumstances in which Bhagavatam is spoken. So they've asked these 4 set of questions, and Sutta Goswami has in the previous verse, he has started to answer the questions. Now, beginning from this verse 1.4.14, Sutta begins to answer the questions about Srila Vyasadeva. So these 12 verses, 1.4.14 to 25, are specifically addressing the sages' questions about, tell us more about Srila Vyasadeva. So we'll do 1.4.14. Sutta vacha dvapare samanu prapte tritya yuga paraye jataha parasharad yogi vasavyam kalaya harehe. Sutta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parashar in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. So he is beginning with the birth of Vyasadeva. And he does not we won't give a whole life history, but he will talk about the birth and some of the primary achievements of Srila Vyasadeva. So while he is talking about this verse, the essential message that Sutta Goswami gave is the glories of Vyasadeva, that how he edited the Vedas, how he wrote the Mahabharata for the deliverance of the fallen people of the age of Kali. So he says that when the second millennium overlapped with the third, so in a Chatur Yuga or a Divya Yuga, there are 4 yugas. So there is Satyug, Treta, Dwapar and Kali Yuga. Now the normal order of the yugas is Satyug, Dwapar, Treta and Kali Yuga. So Dwa means 2, which means it's the second yuga. Tre means 3, which means it's the third yuga. And then the fourth is the age of Kali, which is Kali Yuga. But in our Chatur Yuga, the 28th Chatur Yuga, the order is reversed. So after the Satyug, instead of Treta Yuga, comes the Dwapar Yuga. After Satyug, instead of Dwapar Yuga, comes Treta Yuga. And then that is followed by the Dwapar Yuga. So the Treta and Dwapar Yuga, they switch their orders. And this only happens once in a day of Brahma. So in a day of Brahma, there are 1000 Chatur Yugas. This only happens in the 28th Chatur Yuga. And in this special circumstances, Krishna appears as Swayam Bhagwan. So in all other Chatur Yugas, Krishna appears, but he appears as Vasudeva, as his Vishnu avatar. But in the 20th Chatur Yuga, it's the Avatari who comes. And in the Kali Yuga of that Chatur Yuga appears Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this switching of the yugas is mentioned at quite a few places in the Bhagavatam, but there is not a clear explanation that is given that why do the yugas switch. And one of the understanding is, which is more from an astronomical perspective, and it's complex, I don't understand it, but what seems to happen is, so the point that Srila Prabhupada makes is that there is a chronological order of the 4 millenniums, Satya, Dwapar, Treta and Kali, but sometimes there is an overlapping. So essentially what is happening is that the Dwapar Yuga of the previous Chatur Yuga overlaps with the next Chatur Yuga. So even though so after Satyug, what should come is Dwapar Yuga and then Treta Yuga. So I'm sorry, the Treta Yuga of the previous Chatur Yuga is overlapping with the next one. So the Treta that appears in the 28th Chatur Yuga is probably the Treta from the 27th Chatur Yuga. And because of that overlap, it's seemingly out of order. But again, this is something that apparently it is explained by Satputa Prabhu. And when I asked Rampad Swami, he said it is explained by Satputa, but he said it's very complicated, but just enough to understand that it has some astronomical implications. According to some acharyas, and this is a more bhava, rasika kind of explanation, that because Krishna wanted to be next to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he switched the yugas. because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears in Kali Yuga and Krishna wanted to be next to him. So he appeared in, he switched the Yuga. So he was supposed to come in the Dwapar Yuga, but instead of coming in the second Yuga, he switched it to the third Yuga. So again, this point is not really made by Srila Prabhupada, it's made by some other Gaudiya Vaishnavas, but one of the understandings is there. So Sutta Goswami is describing the birth of Srila Vyasadeva in the 28th Chatur Yuga. So as we know that Vyas is a title, and Vyas literally means to divide. So it's a title given to a person that takes on this responsibility of dividing the Vedas. And in this particular Chatur Yuga, the name of the Vyas is Krishna Dwapena. So he's Krishna because he is dark complexioned, and he is Dvapayana because he is born in a dweep. And we had discussed about Krishna, Vyasadeva's appearance at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, that he was conceived on an island by a congress between Parashar Muni and Satyavati. And there is more details that is given in the 12th canto, 2nd chapter. So one thing that is worth noticing also is that Krishna Dwapena, he appears in lineage of Vyasa. So Krishna Dwapena is a Vyas in the 28th Chatur Yuga. His father is Parashar Muni, who is a Vyas in the 26th Chatur Yuga. The father of Parashar Muni is Shakti, and he is the Vyas in the 25th Chatur Yuga. The father of Shakti is sage Vashishta, who is the Vyas in the 8th Chatur Yuga. And the father of Vashishta is Lord Brahma, who is the Vyas in the 1st Chatur Yuga. So if you look at the lineage of Vyas, all the way to Brahma, each and every, his father, grandfather, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, they all at some point occupied the position of a Vyas. And so we know that he was conceived by Parashar and Satyavati, and his father Parashar Muni, when he is glorifying his son Krishna Dwapena, he mentions that this particular Vyas is special. And the reason is special is because not only did he divide the Vedas, he brought back the Vedas. So there's another pastime of Gautam Rishi where he cursed the Brahmins that they would forget the Vedas. And because of that, the Vedas had actually disappeared. So Krishna Dwapena, he didn't just divide the Vedas, he brought the Vedas back. So Parashar Muni says that he is special, that he is an Amsha avatar of Krishna. And in one of the Puranas it is mentioned that Parashar Muni had performed severe austerities to Lord Shiva to have a son that was equal to his grandfather. So his grandfather is a Brahma Rishi, sage Vashishta, and as a result of the benediction of Lord Shiva, Krishna Dwapena was born. There is also an interesting conversation that happens in Mahabharata between Vyasadeva and his disciples headed by Vaishampaya Muni. So Vaishampaya asks him that, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are? What is your previous life? So this is a section that appears in Mahabharata in the Shanti Parva in the chapter number 350. And I'm going to summarize the section. It's kind of interesting. So in the previous birth, Srila Vyasadeva was a sage by the name of Apantara Tamas. So means that one who is not affected by tamas, ignorance. And he appeared when Lord Vishnu, he uttered the word Bhu. So as we know in the Gayatri, there's Om Bhu Bhavaswa. So Bhu, when he uttered the word Bhu, the manifestation of that Bhu is sage, Apantara Tamas. And he performed severe penances and Lord Vishnu was pleased by him, and then he gives him this benediction. Plus, he also tells him. He says that when the age of Kali, so this is Lord Vishnu talking to sage Apantaramas, when Kali age will set in, then certain princes of the Bharat's line to be called by the name Kauravas will take their birth from you. So as we know, the Kuru dynasty, all sons of Vyasadeva, they will be celebrated over the earth as high soul princes ruling over powerful kingdoms. Born of you, dissensions will break out among them, ending in the destruction at each other's hand, excepting yourself. O foremost of twice-born persons in that age, also endued with austere penances, you will distribute the Vedas into diverse classes. Indeed, in that dark age, your complexion will become dark. That's why he's called Krishna. You shall cause diverse kinds of duties to flow and diverse kinds of knowledge also. Although endued with austere penances, yet you shall never be able to free thyself from desire and attachment to the world. Your son, however, will be freed from every attachment, like unto the Supreme Soul through the grace of Madhav. So this is talking about Sukadeva Goswami. It will not be otherwise. He whom learned Brahmanas call the mind-born son of Brahma, Vasishta, endued with great intelligence, and whose splendor transcends that of the sun itself, will be the progenitor of the race. And then he says, Parashar will be your. He says that Parashar will be your family, will be your father. And then finally he says, it's a long section. Then finally he says that in the next birth, after this birth as Vyasadeva, he says in the next Manvantra, that of Savarna Muni. So this is the current Shani Dev, the son of Surya, becomes the Manu in the next Manvantra of Savarni Manu. And then he says, when you will be taking birth in that Manu, you will be superior to even the Manu himself. Without doubt, you will be so through my grace. Whatever exists in the world represents the result of my exertion. The thoughts of others may not correspond to their acts. As regards myself, however, I always ordain what I think without the least impediment. So this is something that Srila Vyasadeva, he is sharing with his disciples. So Vyasadeva continues, he says, I am he that was born as Apantaratamas to the command of Hari. Once more I have taken birth as a celebrated Krishna Dwapain, a delighter of the race of Vashisht. I have thus told you, my dear disciple, the circumstances of my former birth, which was due to the grace of Narayan, in so much that I was a very portion of Narayan himself. O foremost of intelligent persons, I underwent in the days of past the austere penances, and with the aid of the highest abstraction of the mind, O sons, moved by great affection for you yourself, I have told you everything. So this is Vyasadeva revealing his past life and his future life. So we will go to the next verse. Any questions on this?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances.
You can go to the next verse. Sa kadachir sarasvatya upashrapya jalam suchi vivikta eka asina udite ravi mandale. Once upon a time, he, Vyasadeva, as the sun rose, took his morning ablutions in the water of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate. So the next four verses, 15 to 18, will demonstrate Srila Vyasadeva seeing the disturbances in the future and meditating on how to remediate them. So Srila Prabhupada mentioned in the purport, the river Saraswati is flowing in the Badrika Ashram area of the Himalayas. So the place indicated over here is Samyaprash in Badrika Ashram, where Srila Vyasadeva is residing. So in the current day and age, there is no mention. There is no the Saraswati river has disappeared. So, but it is understood that it was there in the earlier period, because it is mentioned in oh, I'm sorry. Actually, my laptop was on mute. Was there a question that I missed?
Yeah, Prabhu. Actually, Nandakumar Prabhu was asking. So.
Okay. I'm sorry, Nandkumar Prabhu. If you can hold on to the question, let me finish this verse and then we
Yes,
can. Sorry about that. So, as I was mentioning, the river Saraswati is now no longer existing. So at Prayag, which is Sangam of Ganga, Yamuna and Saraswati, basically there is only two rivers, Ganga and Yamuna. So the devotees consider either Saraswati to be flowing in a subtle form, or they consider the Saraswati is flowing flowing in a subterranean form. But the geologists, they think that they know. So there is a dry river bed that flows down from Himalaya. They think that that is the path of the Saraswati, but it's something that is open to conjecture. So Satsuru Maharaj, he makes this point that Srila Vyasadeva, he's in a quite an isolated place. So he's high up in the mountains, in his hermitage, by the flowing river. So these are all auspicious, to be living by a flowing river, to be living with nature, and simple living, hermitage. So he's living a simple, austere, auspicious life, but he is not. But he is not ineffective. So he's not thinking that I'm living here in the remote corner of the world, isolated. What can I do? In fact, he's actually thinking exactly the opposite. That how can I help the billions of people in this planet Earth who are there now and who will be there in the future? So the point Satsuru Maharaj is making, that the simplicity of a devotee does not mean that the devotee becomes simple in his aspirations. So Srila Prabhupada would say that I have only one fault, that I cannot think small. So Prabhupada, when he formed the society, he called it International Society for Krishna Consciousness. At the time, he had just one temple in a rented building in New York City, and he had a small handful of people who were coming. But his vision was international. When he had started the movement before that in Jhansi, he called it the League of Devotees. So the devotees, even though they may be simple, living in simple conditions, but because they're connected to Krishna, they think like Krishna does. So in Krishna's view is the whole universe or several universes, and they are striving for the welfare of the people in general, not just for a few people around them. Okay, so we'll go to the next verse, but I'll stop before that and see if there's any questions. Nandkumar Prabhu?
Prabhu, regarding the switching of yugas from Treta to Dwapara Yuga and in this yuga cycle, I also heard about Gautama Rishi cursing Ahalya, who then who became a statue, and he gives a benediction that Lord Ramachandra would come and revive her in Treta Yuga. And Ahalya was feeling it is too long of separation to be away from him, away from Gautama Rishi. So Gautama Rishi switches the yuga Dwapara Yuga to Treta Yuga. And so Treta Yuga comes first, and then Dwapara Yuga comes next. So this is what I heard. And do you have any thing about that, or is it something that
I also have heard about that, and difficult for me to substantiate, and that's why I guess I didn't discuss. The reason I talked about the other discussion is because it's something that was briefly discussed between Guru Maharaj and me, the switching of the overlapping of the yugas. Even though I'm, honestly speaking, I have limited understanding of even what the overlap means, but it seems to be to some extent substantiated by Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada and by Satputa. So that's why I spoke about it. I know I read about that, but I haven't heard anybody like in our parampara speaking about it. The other fact about Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being close to one another, again, I haven't heard within at least ISKCON parampara, but I read that in a writing of one of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas and Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples. So, but yes, Prabhu, to address your question, I have heard about it. I'm not sure about the veracity of that.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, so we'll do verse 16. Pravaragya sarashihi kalena vyaktaramahasa yugadharma vyatikaram praptam bhuvi yuge yuge. The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to unseen forces of time. So, so this is specifically pointing to the anomalies that happen in the Kali Yuga. And one thing that I noticed, and I'm sure you have also, that Srila Prabhupada uses the term millennium differently based on the context. So sometimes when he uses millennium, it means kalpa, the day of Brahma. Sometimes when he uses millennium, it means to 1,000 years. Sometimes when he uses millennium, it basically points to a yuga. And here it is pointing to a yuga. So when it says all the anomalies and the duties of the millennium, so in the duties of the Kali Yuga. That's the understanding. So a fuller description of Kali Yuga is there in 12.2, Srimad Bhagavatam 12th canto, chapter 2, and some of it is also in the first chapter. So Srila Vyasadeva, as a Trikalagya, he is able to see into the past, present, and future. So in the 11th canto, 15th chapter, Krishna has this conversation with Uddhav when he talks about the various siddhis. So he talks about the Ashta Siddhis, then he talks about 10 more Siddhis, and then he talks about the 5 additional Siddhis. So when he talks about the 5 additional Siddhis, this is in 11:15, 8 to 9. One of the months that he mentioned is Trikalagya, being able to see the past, present, and future, which is characterized apparently as a minor Siddhi. So I was just thinking that if it is a minor siddhi, and even at this age it is so difficult to attain, so what about the major siddhis like prapti or anima or lagima? But Prabhupada mentions that, and again he makes the same point, that the siddhi of Trikalagya is a minor siddhi that others also have. They can also see into the future. But Vyasadeva is specially empowered that he can not only see, he has the ability to make changes also. So one may be able to see the future and just observe it, but Vyasadeva, because he is empowered, he also has the ability to make changes, and we will see that desire come up in him in the in the later verses. So this desire to change is one of the qualities of a devotee. A desire to help the people. So Vyasadeva could have looked into the future and said that this is a terrible age of Kali, and shrugged his shoulders and said, I'm glad I'm not going to be there, and move on, but he did not do that. So he had that strong desire to help us. And for us to take that help, the primary quality that we need is the quality of humility. So the beginning of humility is that we recognize the fact that we are in an age that is troubled. So we are a product of our environment. We are also a product of our desires. There is a certain reason why we are born in the age of Kali, because the subtle body had desires to enjoy in that way. More pious people are born in Satyug, and more sinful people are born in the age of Kali. So that humility that recognizes the fact that we are flawed and we are born at a time that is flawed, and along with that humility, if we have a sense of purpose, that the great sage Vyasadeva has recognized our fallen condition and has somehow or else reached out across time to give us something to help ourself, and that should be the sense of purpose. If we take hold of the hand that Vyasadeva has extended across these thousands of years, and grab onto that hand, and through that hand, the hand of the parampara, and pull ourselves out. So only then can we be rescued. Okay. So I'll go to the next verse. Any questions, comments on this?
So, Guruji, how did he change this? What changes did he make? Vyasadeva, like you mentioned that Vyasadeva can have the ability to make changes. So I'm just wondering, like, what kind of changes, or is that mentioned anywhere?
Yes, Mataji. So it will be mentioned in the subsequent verses, but two changes he made. So one that he made was that he divides the Vedas and writes the Mahabharata to make it more accessible for us. And the second that he made is that he gave us the Bhagavatam. So that's why the sages are encouraging us to avail of the changes. And specifically what they're saying is that out of compassion, he has given us the Bhagavatam, which has been preserved through the millenniums, through the thousands of years since he has come. And if we develop that humility that we are in a fallen condition, take hold of Bhagavatam, which is Vyasadeva's hand across this thousands of years, then we can at least position ourselves to be properly situated in due course of time.
Thank you.
Okay, so any other thoughts or questions? Okay, so we'll do verse 17 and 18. Vautikanam cha bhavanam shaktirhnam cha tatkritam ashatadanam nihastavan durmedan hrasatya shuha Durbagamascha janan vikshya munir divyena chakshusha sarvavarna shamanam yad nadyauhitam amogadrik. The great sage, who was fully equipped in knowledge, could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus, he contemplated for the welfare of men in all statuses and orders of life. So Prabhupada's purport on this can be divided into 4 parts. The first part is this verse. It reveals the impact of the age of Kali. So, the goodness. So, so Nand Kumar Prabhu, can I ask you to mute your? There's a lot of noise coming from your. Okay. So the first thing is the impact of the age of Kali, where passion and ignorance dominate. And in this verse, impatience is mentioned. So patience is a symptom of goodness. Patience for everything. Patience for losing your temper, patience for becoming angry, patience for making advancements. So the age of Kali is instant gratification, and that is a symptom of, and in fact that is glorified, and that is a symptom of more of passion and ignorance, and people will become impatient and greedy and angry. So we have discussed all that, and Srila Vyasadeva, he recognizes this thing happening in the age of Kali. Then the second point that is made is the transcendental vision of Srila Vyasadeva. That not only does he look into this age of Kali as an ocean of faults, but he also looks into the hearts of the people of the age of Kali, and by his transcendental vision, he tries to devise a plan of how to rescue them. So what to do to these faithless, short-lived, sinful, impatient people in this troublesome age. So like I mentioned earlier, he does not shrug his shoulder and move away from it. But his transcendental vision is that, how can I help? Third is, the Prabhupada mentions is the focus on the strong service mood of Srila Vyasadeva. So in the purport he writes that all such transcendentalists who are naturally devotees of the Lord are always eager to render welfare service to the people in general. They are the real friends of the people in general, not the so-called public leaders who are unable to see what is going on, what is going to happen 5 minutes ahead. And the fourth point that Srila Prabhupada makes in the purport is the potency of Srila Vyasadeva. That he is not only just able to see, which itself is a great potency, but he is powerful enough to change, to make changes over there. And he is not doing it out of pride, but he is doing it out of a mood of humble service. Yeah, so we'll go to the next verse. Any questions on this? Okay, then we'll go to 1419. Chaturhotram karma shuddham prajanam vikshya vaidikam vidadad yagya santatyai vedam ekam chaturvidham. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupation could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into 4 in order to expand them among men. So this is the answer to the question that Mataji, you were asking, what did he do? So one of the first things that he did is that he divided the Vedas into chatur, into the 4 parts. And the reason that he divided is because Bhurijan Prabhu gives that analogy that if the child is small, then the mother, in order to feed the child, will make the food into smaller morsels and feed the chow, because she understands that the child will not be able to eat and digest larger morsels of food. So similarly, Srila Vyasadeva, he divided the Vedas into 4. And in addition to that, he is also recognizing the fact that the Vedas in themselves are going to be difficult to be accessed by even after the division into 4. So why are the Vedas difficult to read in the current day and age? And it is explained that before the study of the Vedas, there is a very rigorous study of the Vedangas. So there are 6 Vedangas that one must master before they can approach the Vedas. And this is Nirkut, which is vocabulary, understanding the words; Vyakran, which is understanding grammar; Shiksha, which is pronunciation. So a large part of the Vedas are not meant to be spoken. They are recited during the performance of yagyas, and the pronunciation has to be precise. So a change in the pronunciation can make the yagyas either nishfal, or they may give opposite effect. So before studying the Vedas, people would study shiksha, which is pronunciation, and chanda. Chanda is meters. So the Vedas, different verses are sung in different way, in different kind of Vedas. Like the Bhagavad Gita, we sing in the Anustup chanda. So in the same way, there are different kind of chandas. Then Jyotish, that is one of the Vedangas of astronomy and astrology. And the purpose of Jyotish was to find the correct time and place to perform the sacrifices, the Vedas, the yagyas. So people who were expert in it would study the movement of the planets and the constellations, and they would say, based on the nature of the yagya, they would give a particular time and place. And then finally kalpa. Kalpa is actually performing the sacrifice. So Srila Prabhupada, in the purport, he writes that formerly there was only the Veda of the name Yajur. And the 4 sacrifices were specifically, the 4 divisions of sacrifices were specifically mentioned. But to make them more performable, the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions. And this is the Rig, Sam, Yajur, and Athar Veda. And then in addition to that, Srila Vyasadeva compiled the Puranas and the Itihas, etc., which is known as the 5th Veda. So in the verse, it is said Chaturhotram Karma Shuddham. So Chaturhotra is the 4 kinds of sacrifices that are performed, and it can also be understood as the four ingredients in a sacrifice. So the 4 ingredients in the sacrifice is the person who's performing the sacrifice, the person who is offering the oblations, the fire of the sacrifice, and the intended action. So these are the four kinds of paraphernalia that go. And then the 4 kinds of sacrifice can also mean the 4 kinds of priests that sit in the Vedas. So in the yagya, So in any yagya, there are 4 priests that preside. So there is the Hotra, who is the main performer of the yagya, who is an expert in the Rig Veda, and then he chants all the verses. Then there is the Advaryu, who is an expert in Yajur Veda, and he is the one who constructs the Yoga Mandal. So he knows the science of which direction to make it, what are the proportions, what are the patterns to make it. So that's the Advaryu. Then there is the Udgatar, and the Udgatar is the one who's expert in the Sam Veda, and he sings verses to glorify the Devas, and mostly derived from Sam Veda. And then finally there is the Brahman. The Brahman is expert in the Athar Veda. He's largely quiet, but he's there to observe and correct. So if there is any error that is made in the pronunciation, in the construction of the mandal, in the offering of the oblations, the Brahman, and the Brahman is the one that makes the correction. So that is 1419. Questions, comments on it?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu.
One question. From what point the Veda was normally passing through hearing, and then it was written? What Yasdev in this current age that did the written part because of short memory of people in Kali Yuga?
Yes, Sarang Prabhu. So Prabhupada mentions later on that Vyasadeva, he not only divided the Vedas, but he also had them written down because initially people were Shrutidhars, so they could hear something and remember it perfectly. So the media of transmission of the Vedas was by word of mouth. And there was another reason why the Vedas were not written, because written means that anybody could get a copy of the Vedas, but when it is spoken, the understanding is that you get it from your guru. So the Vedas were only given to people who were qualified, and the guru gives the Vedas along with the proper understanding also. So that is why there were Shrutis. But later on, understanding was that would not be possible. So that's why when Srila Vyasadeva divided the Vedas, he also had them written down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question, comments? Okay, so we'll do 1420. Rig yajaho sama atharva kya vedas chatvara udrataha itihas puranam cha pancham veda uchyate. The four divisions of the original sources of the way of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately, but the historical fact and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the fifth Veda. So, so the point that is being made over here is that one should not think, and this verse is quoted by Jiva Goswami in Tattva Sandarbha, so one should not think that all the spiritual knowledge Srila Vyasadeva only gave in the Vedas. So even the Itihas and the Puranas are at the same level as the Vedas. So Srila Prabhupada in the translation, he writes historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas. So Prabhupada kind of writes about authentic stories even though it's not there in the Sanskrit, because, and in the purport he makes this point, that one should not think that the stories in the Puranas, these are mythology. So one of the terms that is often used in conjunction with the scriptures, especially the Puranas, is they're mythological stories. The Mahabharata is a mythological piece of work, and the Puranas are all a mythology. And this was a term that was actually introduced by the Britishers, and unfortunately the Indians absorbed it. So when they tried to discredit the Indian scriptures, they started calling the Puranas as mythological pieces. And over time, the Indians themselves, they absorbed it. So now you see that a lot of time when they refer to characters, they would say that Arjun is a mythical character in the mythological work called Mahabharata, etc. And Prabhupada was very firm about it. He was saying the stories may look fantastic to us because they're from a different time. Many of them are from different planets. And many of them are actually from different days of Brahma. So the Puranas tend to club them all together, and they don't give a lot of importance in dating them or writing that this planet, this time, etc. But they're factual. And Prabhupada makes the point, if they were not factual, then why would the great sages like Srila Vyasadeva and Romaharshan and Sutta Goswami worry about them? So these are sages who are very much absorbed in asceticism, very much exalted from the intellectual basis. Why would Sutta Goswami speak mythological stories? Why would Srila Vyasadeva write mythological stories? So they're all factual stories, and unless we accept them as factual, we will not accept the messages that they give as factual. So the techniques that is used by the sages is, this will be explained later on, is that when something difficult is to be explained to people with lesser intelligence, then rather than explain the tattva, they illustrate it through a story. So in the what is it called, the Panchatantras. The Panchatantras we used to read, at least I used to read it as a child. So there are a lot of moral stories over there. Now, of course, those stories are just imaginary stories, but they use stories to express morals. The same way the sages, they go to the history of the universe, and they look at great personalities, the pastimes they performed, and they share that to give the spiritual truth that is embedded in it. So Satsaru Maharaj makes a good point on this verse, that we should not become just technical followers of the Vedas, but we should imbibe the spirit of the Vedas. So it is good to follow the do's and don'ts of the Vedas, but ultimately what we have to do is to reach the Vedanta, to reach the conclusion of the Vedas, and the Bhagavatam is a commentary on the Vedanta Sutras. Okay, so we'll do verse 20.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. This is Gaur Sundar Das. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, Gaur Sundar Prabhu.
Prabhu, I have a question. Is it the right time?
Yes, Prabhu, please ask.
Okay. So Vyasadeva divided the Vedas into 4 and wrote them. So this was the beginning of Kali Yuga, which is like 5,000 years before. So I was thinking until the time of Buddha, so when Buddha appears and there are writings which are inscribed in the stone of Sarnath and Kapilavastu and all that. So that happens 2,500 years back, which is 500 BC. So between before Buddha and after do we have a written form that is very prevalent? Because we don't hear much before Buddha. We hear that Vyasadeva wrote, and there is that 1,500 year period where we don't have. I don't know if there is any monuments in India or any other part of Asia where there is somebody who has written, or maybe there is the palm leaf that is more than 3,000 years old.
It's a good question, Prabhu, but I unfortunately do not know the answer to that. I think what you're asking is there any record of the
Yes, Prabhu.
of the written Vedas? Now, the Indologists, they date the Vedas a little differently. They date it at the time of, not very differently, but they date it at the time preceding that of Buddha, and which is about 2,500 years ago. And their conception, of course, is also different, that the Vedas were written by different people over 1,000-year period. And different Vedas, they ascribe to different time periods. I do not know what's the basis of these conclusions. One thing, of course, is, one reason they derive the Vedas as preceding the period of Lord Buddha is because both Buddhism and Jainism, they quote the Vedas. So based on that, they can understand the Vedas precede both Buddhism and Jainism. Within the Vedas, there is a lot of cross references to one another, and based on that they get a sense of the timing, and that's how they try and date it. But I do not know if there is a stone inscription of the Vedas or a palm leaf that they found.
Thank. One more, if you have time, Prabhu.
Sure.
So the Smritis, just like we have Vedas and Upanishads, there is Smriti, there is Manusmriti, Yajnavalkya, Dharma Shastra and Artha Shastra. Was that also written by Vyasadeva, or was it just transferred as a oral reception until recently?
So when you say written by Vyasadeva, so Vyasadeva compiled it. So his own contribution is the Mahabharata and the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Vedanta Sutras. And specifically, later on he glorifies his own contribution that, well, not he, but Sutta Goswami glorifies his contribution specifically for Srimad Bhagavatam and the Mahabharata and the Vedanta Sutras. So things like Manusmriti, Dharma Shastras, they come in the category of Upavedas. So they are not really Vedas, but they are different pieces of literature that support the Vedas, but they are within the body of the scriptures. Just like the Vedas are Apurisham, they are also Apurisham, but they manifest by the realizations of some great sages. And the example that is given is that the laws of gravity have been there since time immemorial. But then a particular scientist, he discovers it and then he publicizes it. So it is known as Newton's law of gravity. And one may question that what happened before Newton was born. So the laws of gravity were always there, but he was the one who called it out. So similarly, there's all these realizations were always there in the Vedas, but the Lord empowered different jivas to realize it and put it in an explicit form.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other question? Okay, so we'll do verse 21. Tatrarveda dhara paila samago jaimani kavihi vaishampayano evayako nishnadya jushamutaha. After the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, Pehla Rishi became the professor of the Rig Veda, Jaimini the professor of Samveda, and Vaishampayan alone became glorified by the Yajurveda. So lineage is being given. The Srila Vyasadeva divided the Vedas and then he handed it over to his disciples. So this verse talks about 3 Vedas. So Pehla Rishi, he became the custodian of the Rig Veda, and there's not much known about Pehla Rishi other than the fact that he is a disciple of Srila Vyasadeva. Jaimini Rishi, he became the custodian of the Samveda. Jaimini Rishi is also the author of Purva Karma Mimamsha, and which is kind of interesting because Purva Karma Mimamsha is one of the Saddarshans, which is actually considered to be atheistic. So the Saddarshans, they're kind of works of logic, but they deny the existence of, or they deny the supremacy of the Lord. So Purva Karma Mimamsha bases itself on the philosophy that if you do your duty, then even God is subservient to your karma. So if you do good things, Krishna is forced to give you good results. If you do bad things, then you will get bad results regardless of whether Krishna wants or not. So while he recognizes the position of God, he makes it subservient to the law of karma. But he's also a proprietor of the Samveda. And I guess it's more a point of trivia. that Jaimini also founded the astrology system. And the current modern astrology, so currently they follow two forms of astrology, and Jaimini Rishi is the second most popular form of astrology, because it is based on computation. The Parashar Muni's form of astrology is based more on intuition. So it is based more on proper living, high thinking. It's more interpretative. But Jaimini Rishi is more based on calculations, mathematics. It lends itself easier to computerization. Most of the computerization of astrology is based on the principles given by Jaimini Rishi. And the third is Vaishampayana Rishi. He's one of the close disciples of Srila Vyasadeva, and he became the proprietor for Yajurveda. So in addition to the Yajurveda, Vaishampaya Muni also is the custodian of Mahabharata. So it is explained that when Srila Vyasadeva composed Mahabharata, it was with a different name. The name that was given was Jaya, and it had 8,800 verses. And Vaishampaya Muni, he expanded it to 24,000 verses, and it was called Bharat at the time. Later on, it gets expanded to 100,000 verses, and then it got the name Mahabharata. And in the planets of the demigods, Mahabharata has 1 crore verses there. So Vaishampaya Muni recited the Mahabharata or Bharat, the 24,000 verses, to King Janmejaya when he was performing the snake sacrifice. So Janmejaya is the son of Parshit Maharaj. And when he heard that his father was killed by Takshak, so he got very angry, and he did this great snake sacrifice. And at the beginning of that, Janmejaya, he asked Vaishampaya Muni to talk about his ancestors. So that's when he recites the 24,000 verses of Bharat. Okay, questions, comments?
How about other Vedas, Prabhu, like Atharva?
Yes, next verse.
Thank you.
So we'll do the next verse. Atharvangirshamaset samantur daruna muni itihas purananam pitamiro maharshanaha. So the translation is, the Sumantu Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Atharva Ved. And my father, so this is Sutta Goswami speaking, my father Romaharshan was entrusted with the Puranas and the historical records. So Angira Muni, as we know, is one of the Saptarishis in the first Manmantra. And he's one of the 10 Manasaputras of Brahma. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, he appears in the 6th canto in the pastime of Maharaj Chitraketu. So he's the one who gives the boon to Maharaj Chitraketu that he'll have a son, and when the son dies, he comes along with Narad Muni and then gives him instructions on transcendental spiritual topics. And Romaharshan, we know he's a direct disciple of Vyasadeva. He was an expert in Puranas and Itihas. So Itihas includes 2 books, Ramayana and Mahabharata. And he was supposed to be the original speaker at Naimisharanya, but again we know he failed to give proper respect to Lord Balaram, so Lord Balaram killed him, and Sutta Goswami took the place of Romaharshan. Okay, next verse. Any questions, comments? Most of the verses are small verses. Prabhupada is just maybe 1 or 2 lines of purports on them. Okay, 1.4.23. Taeta rishya vedam swam samyasan anekada shishya prashishya tatshishyer vedaste sakhina bhavan. All these learned scholars, in their turn, rendered their untrusted Vedas unto their many disciples, grand disciples, and great grand disciples. And thus the respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being. So So the Vedas were not only, it's not that it stopped dividing at this level. The Vedas became even more and more divided between generations of disciples. It's just like a piece of land. The father gives it to 4 sons. Each of the 4 sons gave it to their sons, and their sons gave it to their sons. So in the Kurma Puran, it is explained that the followers of Srila Vyasadeva, and this includes his disciples, great disciples, great disciples, ultimately they divided the Vedas into 1130 branches. And they explain that the Rig Veda is divided into 21 branches, the Yajur Veda into 100 branches, the Sam Veda into 1000 branches, and the Atharva Veda into 9 branches. So if you add it, it becomes 1130. Each of these 1130 is divided into 4 parts: the Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads. And I believe we discussed this a bit earlier. The Brahmanas are meant from the Brahmacharis, the Samhitas for the Grahasthas, the Aranyakas for the Vanaprasthas, and the Upanishad for the Sannyasis. So the total division on the Vedas were 1130 times 4, which is 4520 titles. And in the Tattva Sandarbhas, Jiva Goswami, he analyzes the present title, and based on that, he comes to the conclusion that 94% of the Vedas are lost. So only 6% of the 4520 titles were present 550 years ago. At this particular time, they're probably even lesser. So that's why he basically says that even though the Vedas are a boat that can take us across the material ocean, but the fact that 94% of it is lost means that you can't take shelter of it. And then he steers us towards the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, next verse. Any questions, comments on this? This is verse 24. Teva veda drumede dharyante purusheryata evam chakara bhagvana vyasaha kripanavatsalah. Thus the great sage Vyasadeva, who is very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so they might be assimilated by less intellectual men. So this is restating the same point. So it started with Vyasadeva dividing the Vedas, and then talked about how the divisions were done, and this is the summary that basically restates the point that was made. That's why it starts with thus. That thus, so as we can see, Vyasadeva, he edited the Vedas because he's kind to the ignorant masses, and by dividing the Vedas, he made it possible to be assimilated by less intellectual men. In the purport, Srila Vyasadeva writes, the Vedas are subjects which had to be explained even to Brahmaji by the Supreme Lord. So I don't know, one thing you'll notice is Srila Prabhupada, he typically addresses Lord Brahma as Brahmaji. He does not use the G for any other personality. Right from the very first verse, 1.1.1, he starts with Brahmaji. So he does not say Indraji or Vayuji, but for some reason Srila Prabhupada is fond of calling Brahma Brahmaji. So he says that the Vedas were explained even to Brahmaji by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the subject matter is understood by persons with exceptional qualities of goodness. Persons who are in the mode of passion and ignorance are unable to understand the subject matter of the Vedas. So with the advent of Kali, even though the Vedas has been divided and edited, Srila Prabhupada is making the point that it will be difficult for people to understand the Vedas. Okay, we'll do the next verse. I'll see if there's any questions, comments. Stri Shudra Dvijabandhanam Traina Shruti Gochara Karma Shreyasi Mudhanam Shreya Evam Bhavedyaha Iti Bharatam Akhyanam Kripaya Munina Kritam. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus, he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, laborers, and friends of the twice born. So, till now, Sutta Goswami was talking about the mercy of Srila Vyasadeva in his dividing of the Vedas. But Vyasadeva also understood that even though the Vedas have been divided into 4,530 subdivisions, still the people in the age of Kali will not be able to understand the Vedas. So then what does he give us? He gave us the great historical narration called the Mahabharata. And he gives it for, specifically he says for Stri, Shudra and Dvijabandhu. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, the purpose of the Mahabharata is to administer the purpose of the Vedas. And therefore within the Mahabharata is the summary Veda of Bhagavad Gita. The less intelligent are more interested in stories than in philosophy, and therefore the philosophy of the Vedas in the form of the Bhagavad Gita is spoken by the Lord Shri Krishna. Vyasadeva and Lord Krishna are both on the transcendental plane, and therefore they collaborated in doing good to the fallen souls of this age. The Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all the Vedic knowledge. It is the first book of spiritual values, as the Upanishads are. So it is said that the entire Mahabharata was constructed to create a stage for the Bhagavad Gita to be spoken. And in the Mahabharata, we see so much of intrigue and planning, and we see so much chivalry, great personalities, great powerful evil personalities. And as one reads the Mahabharata, then the attention gets, it's like a pot boiler. One gets totally absorbed in it, and at the pinnacle of that absorption, two of the greatest, most powerful armies are facing one another, ready to fight. Then Bhagavad Gita is spoken. So Srila Vyasadeva, he constructed the Mahabharata to give us the Bhagavad Gita, and the Bhagavad Gita is also known as the Gita Upanishad. So it is giving us the essence of the Vedas. So because in this age of Kali, the reading of the Vedangas is not there, one cannot approach the Vedas. But in order to understand the Mahabharata, you don't need to be an expert scholar. Now, in this current age, we don't even know Sanskrit, but fortunately there are people who know Sanskrit and who have been kind enough to translate to us. So in the third canto, 5th chapter, Vidur, when he's talking to Maitreya Rishi, so Maitreya Rishi explains to Vidur, he says, no, Vidur is talking to Maitreya, so this is Vidur speaking. He says, your friend, the great sage, Krishna Dwapena Vyas, so Vyasadeva and Vidur and Maitreya Rishi were friends. So that's why he's saying your friend Vyasadeva has already described the transcendental qualities of the Lord in his great work, the Mahabharata. But the whole idea is to draw the attention of the mass of people to Krishna Katha, to Bhagavad Gita, through their strong affinity for hearing mundane topics. So he's basically reaffirming the same principles. So in this verse, Sutta Goswami is saying that three kinds of people are not able to develop the rigor to study the Vedas. So he says the first is Stri, the women, because the women traditionally, they take on the role as homemakers, as mothers, They take care of the family and the houses, so they're immersed in the day-to-day affairs. So they're not able to take time to study the Vedangas. Then the Shudras is a class of people who either do not have the propensity or the aptitude to study the Vedas. They prefer to work in the service of others. They're often performing manual, menial tasks. So in the Bhagavatam, it is said, Kalau Shudra Sambhavate, that everybody in this age of Kali is a Shudra. So sometimes when women read this, hear this verse, they get upset that why are you ironing out as women? But essentially, everybody is at the same level. The women because of that reason, and the men because they are Shudras. And Dvija Bandhus are those who are related to the Dvijas. So these are people who are born in Brahmanical families but are not able to pursue the study of the scriptures. So one of the terms that is used to describe Ashwathama after he kills the sons of Draupadi is Dvijabandhu, because he's the son of Dronacharya, but he does not understand the principle of Brahmanical life, which is forgiveness. So the Kali Yuga is so they are all on the same platform. The women, the men born in the more exalted families, they lack either the propensity or the ability to understand the Vedas. So as special compassion, mercy to them, Srila Vyasadeva gives them the Mahabharata. So this is the end of this section wherein Sutta Goswami is answering the question of the sages about Srila Vyasadeva. He's speaking a little bit about the birth of Vyasadeva and mostly about the mercy of Srila Vyasadeva, that through his mercy he divides the Vedas. And right now he hasn't talked about Bhagavatam, so he's talked about how Srila Vyasadeva gives Mahabharata to help the deliverance of the fallen people. So I'll stop over here and see if you have any questions on the preceding section that we have discussed.
One question. So you mentioned, or we hear that, or you mentioned that Bhagavad Gita is essence of the Vedic scriptures. Is that safe to say that Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all the Vedic literatures? And probably I'll just say my entire question. And Bhagavatam is the natural commentary of on the Vedanta Sutras. So, but I mean, from what I understand is Bhagavad Gita is talks more about the Sambandha Gyan and a little bit of Abhideya, but I don't know if it explicitly mentions about Prayojan, but Bhagavatam, we know that we see that after each storyline, whether of killing the demons or whatever it is, our goal is. So basically that's what I feel like. It talks more about the prayojana, or where what should be our aim and what should be our goal. So are the Vedas so when we say the essence of the Vedas is Bhagavad Gita, are the Vedas also talking about Sambandha, Abhideya, and the Vedanta Sutras talking about Prayojan? Because Bhagavatam is the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutras. I don't know if I'm making it.
No, you are. Thank you for the question. So a couple of thoughts is the Bhagavad Gita. Within the Bhagavad Gita, the point is made that so there is the verse that everything that is that can be served by a well is served by a larger body of water. And Prabhupada in the purport writes that the purpose of the Vedas is served by the Bhagavad Gita, because the Bhagavad Gita is the essence of the Vedas. And at different points, Krishna himself rejects the Vedas, directing one to Krishna, to the Bhagavad Gita. Like he said, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistraigun Bhavarjuna, Nirdando Nitsapasto, Nirokshematmama. That the Vedas talk about the three modes, material nature. So don't worry about the Vedas, but focus on the Bhagavad Gita. So philosophically, the Bhagavad Gita talks primarily about Sambandha, and then, as you rightly pointed out, it talks a little bit about Abhidaya. So the essence of the Bhagavad Gita is the description of, firstly the description of the soul, then the description of the position of the Lord, which is Krishna, and then the relationship between the two. And of course, there are glimpses of Abhidaya, like when Krishna says, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. So those are Abhidaya. What can you do? The Srimad Bhagavatam primarily talks about Abhidaya. So the focus of the Bhagavatam is, what do people who have understood their relationship with Krishna do? What do practicing devotees do? So we see in the Bhagavatam people who are already anchored in their understanding of the relationship. And the Bhagavatam, only in the introductory part, explains the position of Krishna, specifically in the first three chapters. There's focus on the position of Krishna. After that, it doesn't talk in re-establishing the position of Krishna. So like in the Bhagavad Gita, there is an introductory talk about the position of the jiva as a soul. After that, Krishna doesn't talk about that. Then he primarily talks about the other aspects of himself and the relationship. Then the Srimad Bhagavatam begins from where Bhagavad Gita ends. It talks about, the introduction is the position of Krishna, which is the carryover from Bhagavad Gita. But then it carries on with that, now that you've understood the relationship with Krishna, how do you establish it? So the different aspects, how Dhruva Maharaj performed austerities, how Prahlad Maharaj performed the various angas of surrender, how Ajamel took shelter of the holy name. So different aspects of establishing that relationships. And just like Bhagavad Gita, there is Sambandha and Abhidaya, focus a little bit on Abhidaya. Bhagavatam, there is Abhidaya and a little bit focus on Prayojan. So especially in the 10th canto, we'll see that how devotees are enjoying in the relationship to Krishna. But most of the Bhagavatam is Abhidaya. Chaitanya Charitamrita is mostly about Prayojan. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, we see, especially in the Antalila, we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enjoying in that relationship. He's experiencing the Mahabhav and the various things that he does, the various activities that he does to preach. So that is more of a book called Prayojan. Essentially, they're all commentaries on the Vedantas. So the Vedanta includes all three aspects of Sambandha, Abhidaya, and Prayojan. Each one of these books, they focus on one particular aspect of the Vedanta.
So, Prajit, like follow up on that. So Vedanta is like the sort of like the end of the Vedas, right? I mean, is that fair to interpret it that way?
Yes, it is an end of the Vedas in the sense that it is the conclusion of the Vedas. So what is the summary of what all the Vedas say? That's the Vedanta.
So what are Vedanta Sutras?
So Vedanta Sutras are written by Srila Vyasadeva, and the motivation of him writing the Vedanta Sutras was that the Vedas, while they contain while they contain this knowledge, but it is dispersed. It is dispersed over a large body of work. So he feared that people would get lost in the ocean of Vedas and would not be able to get to the Vedanta, understand what is the real purpose of the Vedas. So for that purpose, he wrote a so sutras is basically terse, like terse commentary. So he wrote a commentary on the Vedanta. So the Vedanta Sutra is basically a commentary on the summary of the Vedas. So what he took was that he took a very large body of work, he extracted the essence of it, and then he wrote a commentary on it. And that is what. So the Vedanta Sutras is not very big. It is, I believe, 660, 650 verses. But each one of the verses are very, very condensed. And they carry a lot of, so the purpose to the verse can be very, very big. But Srila Vyasadeva, he wrote kind of, it's almost like, think of it as this way, that there are certain phenomena that can be expressed through explanations. That there was a boy and he was walking on the road, and there was a hole and he fell into the hole, and the hole was deep, so it took him a long time to fall into the hole. So they talk about perhaps the law of gravity, perhaps the fact that there's acceleration over there, but they explain it through stories. And what the sutras will do is they will explain it through that F is equal to M into A, or whatever, some equation that gives that same theory in a very precise way. So that's the Vedanta Sutras. But the Vedanta Sutras are even more than the Vedas. They're difficult to understand because they condense so much in so little. So then Srila Vyasadeva, he expanded the Vedanta Sutras into the Srimad Bhagavatam.
So is the Chaitanya Charitamrita a natural commentary to something also? Like the Bhagavatam is a natural commentary to Vedanta Sutra. Is Chaitanya Charitamrita also like explains something in a better or natural commentary of something?
It's a very good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'll try and find it, and I would request all of you also to think about it and find out. Logical answer would be yes, but off the top of the head, I cannot. I don't know the answer to that.
So Prachi, just to backtrack a little bit. So you so like the 4,500 whatever the titles of the Vedas, entire Vedas, is basically summarized into 600 something verses in the Vedanta Sutras, and then and then the Vedanta Sutras are again explained three times in times 3 in the 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. Is that the chronology? So the Vedas, like the 4,000, however it be calculated, right? Like those, however we came up to that number, the 4,500, and then the Vedanta Sutras is 600 something, and then 18,000 of the Bhagavatam. So that's the
sequence. I would probably not use the word chronology because that indicates some kind of a time sequence there, because the Vedas were always 4,530, right? If you have a cake and you divide it into 4 pieces, the cake always had the 4 pieces. Just because you divided it does not mean that there's something different that manifests. And the Vedanta Sutras, even though Srila Vyasadeva wrote it, but they're also eternal. So I'm a little hesitant to put it on a time scale, but from the perspective of understanding, the point you're making is absolutely correct. That the Vedas is summarized in the Vedanta Sutras, which are explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Gaur Sundar Prabhu.
Prabhu, when you see itihasas and Puranas, I'm just trying to compare both. So itihasas are the historical collection of events. So I was thinking, doesn't itihasas fall into the category of Puranas? Why do we need to term it as itihasas? Because anyway, both are same.
They are same. The difference is that
Is it a larger body called itihasas and shorter ones are called Puranas?
so they are the same. The difference is that the itihas, the entire body of itihas is clustered around a singular personality, whereas the Puranas, they contain a collection of pastimes of several personalities. So Ramayana is about Lord Ram. Mahabharata is about the Pandavas. So the entire Mahabharata, it begins with the Pandavas, it ends with the Pandavas. In the Srimad Bhagavatam or the Padma Puran or the Kurma Puran, there are pastimes of several personalities. There, not any particular single personality. So that's the main difference between Itihas and Puran.
Thank you, Prabhu. I have one more. In this last verse, 1:4:25, the translation says Vyasadeva compiled the great historical narration called Mahabharata for women, Shudras, and the friends of Brahmana. So Ramayana was also existing in this period. So I was for the people in general, if the people are going to be less qualified or unqualified in coming ages, and they're not going to be interested in the Vedic scriptures, Ramayana itself is a huge book that it takes a long time to study and understand. If we have an edition called Mahabharata, then won't it create less interest for people because there's too much already? There's already a lot of verses in Ramayana.
Well, so I'm not sure how to answer that. The understanding is that so what's that statement that Prabhupada would make, that that variety is the source of variety is he would say the festivals are the mother of bhakti, and variety is the source of enthusiasm or eagerness, something like that. He said that basically some amount of variety is there to inspire people to take to it. So factually speaking, even in our contemporary lives, we see that people, at least people who are interested in these things, they're very comfortable with both Mahabharata and with Ramayana and with Srimad Bhagavatam. I mean, personally, like you and I, who are not really great scholars, we have a fair understanding of Mahabharata, we have a fair understanding of Ramayana and that of Bhagavatam, and it is also there to attract people with different propensities. Right? There are some people who are naturally attracted to Lord Ram. There are some people who are naturally attracted to Krishna, and and that's one reason why there's Srimad Bhagavatam, and there is Ramayana, and then there is Mahabharata. So between them, Ramayana is 24,000 verses, Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses, Mahabharata is 100,000 verses, but I'm not sure how many of those verses are there. But I guess with all the limitations we have in the age of Kali, even that is something that is digestible. But I'm just kind of thinking aloud. I don't know if I have an answer to your question that is authoritative.
So my thought was more of like the whole idea was to simplify the Vedic scriptures for people who cannot understand. And the process of simplification, if it would have been nicer if instead of Mahabharat, Ramayana would have been glorified, and the point that Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead could have been proved through Ramayana, because it's anyway existing for more than 1 millennium. So it started in Treta Yuga and the whole Dwapara Yuga, and then so it anyway lived that long. So why was another body of literature introduced, knowing people are not going to be having that capacity or interest to go through it?
Right. So I got your question. So I don't have the answer to the why. That why was Mahabharata spoken when Ramayana was already there, or why was the Bhagavatam spoken when Mahabharata was already there? I think the only thing that I can speculate is that it gave people with different propensities somewhere to get their interest. There are some people, like we see in the lifetime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Murari Gupta, he was interested in Ramayana, and he was a devotee of Lord Ram. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was Krishna, and he was encouraging people to read Srimad Bhagavatam. And Purani Gupta, of course, was fond of Srimad Bhagavatam, but his main worshipful deity was Lord Ram. So we can take the point you're making just for the sake of discussion and say that why was even the Bhagavatam or the Mahabharata or Ramayana spoken when the Vedantas could have been summarized in Etecham Sakala Pumsha Krishnastu Bhagwan Swayam, right? That would have been only one verse. The entire scripture is only one verse. All you have to know is to read that verse and understand it. But obviously, to support that verses, there are more verses. To support the verses, there are even more verses. At some point, the acharyas or Krishna, he decides that, okay, this is what is a number that is palatable. That's what they've given us.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Prabhu?
Looks like we lost Bhayahari Prabhu. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Very good.